What's up and welcome back to another video. My name is Devin Belanger and I saw a great video from my friend the Midlife Synthesist that I'll link below here, and I thought it would be fun to do a video touching on the opposite end of the spectrum. That is synthesizers that are fantastic synths and that are really great overall instruments that are for somebody, but that did not work out for me and I regretted buying for my studio. Now, like I mentioned, each of these synths are great for the right person, but they just didn't work out for me, and therefore I no longer have any of them in my studio, so in many cases you won't actually be seeing my footage. If you enjoy and take away one thing from this video, it's that hopefully you don't get caught up in the hype and gas of having to have the new thing or having to have some sort of really well-reviewed box from a certain company, because at the end of the day, we all have our own preferences, and I've just really learned what types of synthesizers and groove boxes I really gravitate towards and which ones I tend to avoid for my own workflow nowadays. That segues perfectly into my first pick, which is the Elektron Digitone and Digitact. Yes, this might come as a big surprise for some of you, but I purchased both of these instruments and I was really excited to dive on in. I'd heard so many great things about them. I felt that the Digitone and Digitact, I still don't know how to pronounce them exactly, were really amazingly powerful boxes, and I completely get why for some it's the end-all be-all of groove boxes, and there are people who exclusively use Elektron stuff to make music. I unfortunately was not one of those people, and every time I found myself making a beat that I kind of liked, I had it in the back of my head, I can just do this in my DAW much quicker with my own sonic flair, with my own collection of samples and synths. But overall, the Digitone and Digitact were some of the shortest lived synths in my studio, and while I was happy I got to try them, I realized, at least so far, the Elektron workflow hasn't been my cup of tea. Next up, I have a synthesizer that on paper I thought I would love and I was so excited to get into my studio, the Sequential Pro 2. Now, if you've been watching my channel for any number of years, then you probably know that I am a massive fan of Sequential / Oberheim, and so when I saw a good deal come up for one locally, I couldn't resist and I had to drive out there and purchase it in cash. When I got it back to my studio, the first couple days I was blown away. The modulation matrix, the sequencer, everything was just lining up and I was so excited. But then I went on to use the Pro 2 in exactly one song in the entire year and a half that I owned it. The Pro 2, in my opinion, I felt like it kind of struck an awkward in-between spot between a polysynth where I wanted to play chords on it and take advantage of the interesting character that its kind of lower resolution digital waveforms going into beautiful analog filters had, but it didn't have enough voices for that. And then on the other side, it struck an in-between between that and a monosynth where I never really found that the oscillators had the right weight and heft that I was looking for in a monosynth for my music, so it kind of got caught in between. What I do miss about the Pro 2 is that amazing sequencer. I still think that the Pro 2 has one of the best sequencers in the business, and yes, I know I need to get my hands on the Pro 3 and try it out. I would probably like that a lot more, but at the end of the day, the Pro 2, it just was gathering dust and it had to go to someone who would use it more. Number 3 is one that you might not expect, considering I sung very high praises for this synthesizer, and that is the Moog DFAM. I think that the Moog DFAM is a fantastic sounding instrument, and the workflow and sequencer and fun factor is beyond fantastic. So why do I regret buying it? Why did it not stay in my studio? Well, for one simple reason: the lack of MIDI. Now, yes, I know I'm preparing for comments that are going to tell me that I should just, get good and get CV adapters or whatnot, or even just, sequence outside of using MIDI. But for me in my workflow, I produce inside the DAW. I need MIDI. I need things that can easily snap to the BPM that I'm working in. A few times I tried to just export out raw audio, line it up, and warp it in time in Logic. But by the time I did that, I just wasn't that inspired anymore. And again, like so many other things on this list, the DFAM just kind of sat on the shelf and gathered dust. Number 4, the Behringer TD3. Now, I know this is a very affordable piece of kit, and I think it's a great piece of kit. I think that if you like the acid sound, the Behringer TD3 sounds fantastic. I don't have it anymore, so I'm not able to compare it against the Donner B1 synthesizer, which I reviewed last year, but between the two of them, it's so cool that you can get essentially a clone of a 303 with that authentic sound for like $100 US. So why did I regret buying the TD3? TD3? Well, I think I realized after buying the Behringer TD3 that I don't really need an authentic 303 sound in my music. I have so much respect for the legacy of the original 303 and the history of acid house, but for my music in particular, I don't really use that sound that much, and if I do need that sound, I'm pretty happy with the sound of an overdriven ladder filter at high resonance, or honestly some of the included software filters in synths like Serum. Similarly, the Behringer TD3 sequencer was just too brain-breakingly confusing for my DAW mind to grasp, and I almost never used it in sequencer mode. Great synth if you're after that acid sound, but I have to say, because of how much more playable the Donner clone is with the keyboard and the much better sequencer, I would probably urge you, if you just want that acid sound or you want your first synthesizer and don't want to spend a lot of money, go for the Donner instead if you just want something that isn't going to make you hit your head against the wall because of the sequencer. All right, and finally, we've saved the best for last. Now, the final synth that I regret buying might come as a huge shock because it is truly a fantastic synthesizer, like all of these are, but this one's on another level. And that is, of course, the Mini Moog Voyager Old School. Now let's rewind time several years to when I had my Moog Sub 37 and I just got my Moog Matriarch, and I was obsessed with the Moog sound. I was constantly looking on Craigslist ads to see if any vintage Moogs like the Rogue or a vintage Model D were coming up, and nothing was really within my price range. So when I saw a great deal on a used old school Mini Moog Voyager, I didn't even think about it, I just went and bought it right away. And I took the synth home to my studio and I could not believe how good it sounded. The build quality was beautiful. It really felt like holding a piece of Asheville history. And to this day, I still think that the Voyager, I haven't owned a real Model D, but it's probably the best sounding Moog synthesizer I've owned. But there was one thing that I probably should have foreseen to be an issue, and I didn't. And that was, of course, the lack of any sort of MIDI or USB or really any connectivity. I guess it's in the name, old school, but I didn't really realize how much of a hindrance that was going to be to my workflow. The Mini Moog Voyager, it really just had to play duties of me playing in notes individually, which at the time I had that synth wasn't really appropriate for the style of music, mainly really quantized EDM that I was performing. So at the end of the day, the Mini Moog Voyager, it didn't stay very long in my studio, but it was actually a happy ending because I found someone locally who wanted a Mini Moog Voyager old school and agreed to trade me for my OB6, which you see behind me, and to this day is still the synth that has honestly changed my life the most. It's been on every single recording. The video doing really well started really making me take this synth channel seriously, and to this day, there's not a single miles away track that I make that doesn't have the OB6 somewhere. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this kind of talking video, this kind of informal video. I've got lots of playing synth videos, demos, reviews, a new sound pack coming for you soon. So I'll wrap this up here. If you did enjoy, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.